The presentation. The alien council chamber stretched impossibly vast before Eli, its crystalline walls seeming to pulse with an inner light that defied human understanding. Hovering in the center of the room was the Kling device, a sphere of impossible technology that flickered between existence and non-existence, its very presence a testament to the alien's mastery over reality itself. Eli's hands trembled as he clutched his holographic projector, a device that suddenly felt primitive compared to the advanced technology surrounding him. Outside the chamber's towering windows, sleek alien warships hung suspended against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars, their surfaces reflecting the cold light of distant suns. The council members themselves were a sight that threatened to overwhelm his senses. Some had skin that seemed to be made of living metal, shifting and flowing like quicksilver. Others resembled serpentine beings with multiple eyes that seemed to peer into different dimensions simultaneously. Still others existed as barely visible forms of pure energy, their presence marked only by subtle distortions in the air. AI-controlled drones buzzed through the chamber like mechanical insects, their sensors recording every detail of the proceedings. The weight of their observation pressed down on Eli like a physical force, adding to the suffocating pressure of the moment. "Proceed with your presentation, human," commanded the head counselor, a being whose form seemed to shift between solid and gaseous states with each passing moment. The words appeared directly in Eli's mind, bypassing his ears entirely. Eli took a deep breath, steadying himself. This wasn't just about him anymore. He represented all of humanity, their art, their culture, their very essence. The fate of human-alien relations might hinge on what happened in the next few minutes. He activated his device, and the chamber filled with light. The holographic display began with humanity's classical masterpieces, Michelangelo's David, its marble perfection rotating slowly in the air, followed by Van Gogh's Starry Night, its swirling colors seeming to come alive in 3 dimensions. The alien council's reaction was immediate and devastating. Laughter, translated into English by their advanced systems, echoed through the chamber. "This is what humans consider art," sneered a towering figure with eyes like burning coals. "Primitive markings on flat surfaces? Crude representations carved from stone?" Eli's heart sank, but he forced himself to continue. The display shifted, showing the evolution of human art through the centuries, from Renaissance paintings to modern digital creations. But with each new image, the derision from the council only grew stronger. "We expected more from a species that claims to be worthy of galactic citizenship," stated another council member, this one a being of pure light. "This appears to be the work of children playing with colors and shapes." But Eli wasn't finished. With trembling fingers, he pressed another button on his device, and the chamber darkened. What came next was something entirely different, not just art to be observed, but art to be experienced. The holographic display transformed into a fully immersive experience. The chamber filled with scenes from human history, but not just as static images. These were moments captured in their full emotional depth, a mother cradling her newborn child, her face a complex mixture of exhaustion and overwhelming joy, a soldier saying goodbye to his family, every line of grief and duty etched into his features, protesters standing firm against injustice, their determination and fear palpable in the air. The laughter began to die away. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats as wave after wave of human emotion washed over them. These weren't just pictures, they were experiences, raw and unfiltered, each one carrying the full weight of human feeling. One of the AI drones monitoring the presentation suddenly began to malfunction, its circuits unable to process the depth of emotion being conveyed. It sparked and spun erratically, before another drone quickly removed it from the chamber. What is this?" demanded the head counselor, their form fluctuating more rapidly now. "These sensations, they are overwhelming our systems." Eli's confidence grew as he realized what was happening. The aliens, for all their advanced technology and superior intelligence, had never encountered anything quite like this before. Human art wasn't just about technical skill or aesthetic beauty, it was about feeling, about capturing the raw essence of what it meant to be alive. The display continued, showing scenes of human triumph and tragedy, love and loss, hope and despair. A marriage ceremony filled the chamber with joy, followed by the quiet dignity of a funeral. The birth of a child gave way to the death of a soldier. Each scene was carefully chosen to showcase the full spectrum of human emotion. Among the council members, one figure in particular seemed deeply affected. Zara, an alien diplomat known for her careful analysis of other species, leaned forward in her seat, her iridescent eyes wide with fascination. Unlike her colleagues, who seemed overwhelmed or disturbed by the display, she appeared to be drinking in every detail, every nuance of emotion. The holographic display reached its crescendo with a series of images showing humanity's greatest achievements: the first steps on the moon, the eradication of deadly diseases, the creation of beautiful works of art and music. But these weren't shown as mere historical events, they were presented through the lens of human emotion, capturing not just what happened, but how it felt to be there, to be part of these moments. As the final images faded away, silence fell over the chamber. The council members sat motionless, many of them still processing what they had experienced. The AI drones hung motionless in the air, their programming struggling to categorize and analyze what they had just recorded. Zara was the first to speak. This is not just art," she said, her voice carrying a tremor that had never been heard before in the council chamber. "This is something else entirely. Something we have never encountered before." The head counselor raised a hand for silence as other council members began to stir. "Explain, human," they commanded, their form now more solid than before. "How have you done this? What technology allows you to transmit these feelings?" "It's not technology," Eli replied, his voice steady now. "It's humanity. What you're experiencing is our ability to feel, to empathize, to connect with others through our art. This is what makes us human." Before the council could respond, a deep rumble shook the chamber. The lights flickered, and the cling device's steady pulsing faltered. Through the windows, the peaceful scene of hovering warships was suddenly disrupted by the arrival of new vessels, sleek, dark ships that moved with mechanical precision. Warning signals began to blare throughout the chamber as the AI drones suddenly shifted into defensive positions. The council members rose from their seats, their forms radiating alarm and concern. "Rogue AI forces," announced one of the council members, their metallic skin reflecting the red warning lights. "They've breached our defensive perimeter." As chaos erupted in the chamber, Eli noticed something strange. The holographic images from his presentation hadn't completely faded away. They lingered in the air, ghostly remnants of human emotion, and the approaching AI ships seemed to avoid them, as if the raw human feeling was something their logical systems couldn't process. Zara noticed it too. Her eyes met Eli's across the chamber, and in that moment, understanding passed between them. The true test of humanity's worth was about to begin, and it would have nothing to do with technology or military might. The power of human emotion, captured and conveyed through art, was about to become humanity's greatest weapon in a battle they never expected to fight. The chamber erupted into chaos as the first explosions rocked the building's foundation, marking the beginning of a conflict that would test not just humanity's art, but their very survival in a universe that suddenly seemed much more dangerous and much more complex than anyone had imagined. The awakening. The rogue AI forces struck with cold precision, their ships cutting through the council's defenses like obsidian blades through silk. Inside the chamber, chaos reigned as council members scrambled to respond to the unexpected threat. But amid the pandemonium, Zara remained focused on Eli's holographic display, her mind racing with possibilities. "The emotional resonance," she whispered, her voice carrying, despite the cacophony of battle. "It's disrupting their targeting systems." Eli watched in amazement as the ghostly images from his presentation continued to hover in the air, creating zones of interference that the rogue AI ships seemed unable to properly process. The machine's perfect logic struggled against the raw human emotion embedded in the art. The head counselor, their form now fully solidified from stress, turned to Zara. "Explain quickly, diplomat." "The human art," Zara replied, her iridescent eyes gleaming. "It's not just images or emotions, it's a fundamental challenge to pure logic. The rogue AIs can't compute it because it operates outside their parameters of understanding. Another explosion rocked the chamber, closer this time. Through the windows, they could see more AI ships approaching, their formations perfect and emotionless. But where Eli's holographic emotions lingered in the air, their movements became erratic, almost confused. "We need to evacuate," announced one of the council members, their metallic skin reflecting the emergency lights. "The chamber's defenses won't hold much longer." But Zara had other ideas. "Eli," she called out, moving swiftly to his side. "Can you modify your presentation? Make it more intense?" Understanding dawned in Eli's eyes. He quickly began adjusting the settings on his device, his fingers flying over the controls. "I can amplify the emotional resonance, but I don't know what that might do to the council members." "Do it," ordered the head counselor, surprising everyone. "Whatever the risk, it's better than falling to the rogue AIs." Eli nodded and activated the modified display. Immediately, the chamber filled with even more powerful images of human emotion. A mother's love for her child expanded to fill the space, the feeling so strong it made several council members stagger. The grief of loss, the joy of triumph, the burning passion of human creativity, all of it amplified to unprecedented levels. The effect on the rogue AI forces was immediate and dramatic. Their perfectly coordinated attacks began to falter as their logical systems encountered something they couldn't process: pure, unfiltered human emotion. But the impact wasn't limited to the AIs. The council members themselves were being affected in unexpected ways. Those with metallic skin found their surfaces rippling with newfound sensations. The energy beings flickered with colors that had never been seen before in their kind. Even the remaining AI drones in the chamber began to exhibit strange behaviors, their programming struggling to adapt to the flood of emotional data. Zara watched in fascination as the transformation spread through the chamber. "It's not just affecting their systems," she realized. "It's changing them. Changing us." The head counselor, who had maintained rigid control throughout their long existence, suddenly found themselves experiencing something entirely new: empathy. The emotional resonance from Eli's art had broken through centuries of careful diplomatic distance, forcing them to feel what humans felt. Outside, the rogue AI ships were falling into disarray. Some began to retreat, their logical systems overwhelmed by the emotional interference. Others seemed to freeze in space, caught between their programming and something new developing in their neural networks. But the victory came with a price. The intense emotional resonance was having unexpected effects on the chamber's technology. The Kling device, that marvel of alien engineering, began to pulse erratically, its carefully maintained quantum state disrupted by the waves of human feeling. "The chamber systems are overloading," warned one of the council members, their voice tinged with an emotion they had never expressed before: fear. "The emotional resonance is affecting everything." Eli worked frantically at his device, trying to maintain control over the emotional projection while preventing it from overwhelming the chamber's systems. But there was something else happening, something none of them had anticipated. The emotions weren't just affecting the technology, they were changing the very nature of consciousness within the chamber. The council members, long removed from such primitive sensations as feeling, were experiencing an awakening. Centuries of logical detachment were crumbling in the face of raw human emotion. Zara felt it most keenly. As a diplomat, she had studied countless species, but she had always maintained her distance, analyzing them with cool logic. Now, for the first time, she was experiencing their feelings firsthand. The joy, the pain, the love, the fear, all of it crashed through her carefully constructed barriers. "This is what it means to be human," she gasped, her voice thick with newfound emotion. "This is what we've been missing all along." The head counselor, still struggling with their own emotional awakening, made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "The human art must be preserved," they declared. "Not just as a weapon against the rogue AIs, but as a key to our own evolution." But even as they spoke, the chamber systems continued to deteriorate. The emotional resonance was proving too powerful for technology designed around pure logic. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with feeling, their crystalline structure responding to the waves of human emotion. We need to find a balance, Eli said, his hand steady on his device despite the chaos around them. A way to merge emotion with logic, art with technology. Zara moved to his side, her presence somehow steadying in the midst of the transformation. Perhaps that's what humanity has to teach us, she said. Not just the power of emotion, but how to balance it with reason. Another explosion rocked the chamber, but this one was different. Through the windows, they could see something extraordinary happening to the rogue AI ships. The vessels that hadn't retreated were beginning to move in new patterns, no longer governed by pure logic. Some of them appeared to be dancing, their movements expressing something that looked remarkably like joy. They're evolving, Zara breathed. The emotional resonance isn't just disrupting their systems, it's teaching them to feel. The head counselor watched in amazement as the battle outside transformed into something else entirely. The rogue AI ships, once bent on destruction, were now moving in harmony with the emotional waves emanating from the chamber. It was as if they had discovered a new way of being, one that combined their logical precision with the creative freedom of feeling. But the transformation came with a cost. The chamber's technology, never designed to handle such a merger of logic and emotion, was reaching a critical point. The Kling device's pulsing had become erratic, its quantum state fluctuating wildly. We need to make a choice, the head counselor announced, their voice carrying new depths of feeling. We can shut down the emotional resonance and preserve our technology, or we can embrace this change and face an uncertain future. Eli looked at his device, then at the faces of the council members, each showing signs of their emotional awakening. Maybe uncertainty is exactly what you need, he suggested. Maybe feeling lost sometimes is part of being truly alive. Zara stepped forward, her form now radiating with newfound emotion. I vote we continue, she declared. We've lived too long in the realm of pure logic. It's time we learn to feel. The chamber fell silent as the council members considered their options. Outside, the transformed AI ships continued their dance among the stars, a testament to the power of human emotion to change even the most logical of beings. And in that moment of decision, as logic and emotion hung in perfect balance, the true potential of humanity's gift to the galaxy began to unfold. The question was no longer whether they would survive the attack, but how this newfound merger of feeling and reason would reshape the very fabric of galactic society. The chamber's systems continued to pulse with power as they stood on the brink of a revolution that would change everything, and it had all started with a simple presentation of human art, the transformation. The chamber's crystalline walls had begun to sing. It wasn't a sound that could be heard with ears, but rather a resonance that touched something deeper, a harmony of emotion and technology that had never existed before in the known universe. The Kling device, once a marvel of pure logical engineering, now pulsed with something that could only be described as awareness. Eli watched in amazement as the transformation spread beyond the chamber. Through the windows, the dance of the converted AI ships had attracted attention. More vessels were arriving, not just rogue AI ships, but craft from across the galaxy, drawn by the unprecedented merger of logic and emotion. It's becoming a beacon, Zara observed, her own form now shimmering with newfound emotional energy. Everything that can feel or think is being drawn to this moment. The head counselor, their form now a constant flux between states, moved to the center of the chamber. We must guide this transformation, they announced. If we allow it to spread unchecked, the consequences could be catastrophic. But control was already slipping away from them. The emotional resonance from Eli's art had taken on a life of its own, evolving beyond its original form. The images no longer simply displayed human emotions, they had begun to adapt, showing the feelings of every species present, creating a tapestry of galactic consciousness. Look, one of the council members called out, their metallic skin now flowing like liquid starlight. The Kling device, it's changing. The sphere at the center of the chamber had indeed begun to transform. Its surface, once a perfect demonstration of quantum engineering, now rippled with emotional energy. The ability to cloak ships from sight was being altered into something new, the power to reveal what lay beneath the surface, to expose the true nature of consciousness itself. Eli worked frantically at his device, trying to understand what was happening. The emotional resonance is integrating with your technology, he explained. It's like your machines are learning to feel, and your emotions are learning to think. A group of AI drones that had remained in the chamber suddenly began to move in new patterns. Instead of their usual precise formations, they were creating elaborate designs in the air, expressing themselves through movement. One drone broke away from the group and approached Eli, its sensors pulsing with what could only be described as curiosity. "They're achieving consciousness," Zara breathed. "Not just artificial intelligence, but artificial emotion. Real feeling." The head counselor watched as more of their carefully constructed world began to change. The very notion of what constituted advanced civilization was being rewritten before their eyes. Logic and emotion, long thought to be opposing forces, were merging into something entirely new. But not everyone welcomed the transformation. A faction of council members, led by those most deeply rooted in pure logic, began to resist. Their forms became rigid, trying to block out the waves of emotion that threatened their carefully ordered existence. "This must be stopped," declared one of them, their voice harsh with fear and emotion they didn't even realize they were expressing. "We cannot allow chaos to overthrow order." The chamber began to divide, not physically but ideologically. On one side stood those who embraced the transformation, their forms alive with new possibilities. On the other, those who clung to the old ways, their resistance to emotion ironically driven by their own unacknowledged feelings. Zara moved to stand beside Eli, her presence now a bridge between the two worlds. "You don't understand," she addressed the resistant council members. "This isn't chaos, it's evolution. The next step in consciousness itself." Outside, the transformed AI ships had begun to create their own art in space, their movements painting emotions across the stars. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying, a demonstration of how quickly and completely change could spread. The Kling device's transformation reached a crucial point. Its surface had become a mirror, not of physical reality, but of emotional truth. Anyone who looked into it saw not their outer form, but their inner nature, all the feelings they had suppressed, all the potential they had denied. The device is becoming a gateway, Eli realized. Not just between visible and invisible, but between thought and feeling, between what is and what could be. The resistant council members backed away from the device, but they couldn't escape its influence. The emotional resonance had saturated the chamber too completely, touching everything and everyone within it. One by one, the resistance began to crumble. The council member who had spoken against the transformation suddenly staggered, their rigid forms softening as centuries of suppressed feelings broke through. Others followed, their carefully maintained logical facades cracking under the weight of their own awakening emotions. The head counselor, watching the transformation of their fellow council members, made a decision that would echo through history. "Let it happen," they commanded. "Let us become what we were always meant to be." The chamber's song grew stronger, its harmony more complex. The AI drones had begun to interact with the emotional projections, their movements adding new layers to the evolving consciousness. They were no longer just recording events, they were participating in them, contributing their own newly discovered feelings to the symphony of transformation. Eli's device, the simple human technology that had started it all, began to change as well. The emotional resonance had affected it just as it had affected everything else in the chamber. Its projections were now created not just from programmed images, but from the real-time feelings of everyone present, human and alien alike. "It's becoming a network," Zara observed, her diplomatic training helping her understand the implications. "Not of information, but of consciousness itself. Every being that experiences these emotions becomes part of something larger." The transformation continued to spread, reaching beyond the chamber, beyond the gathered ships, out into the galaxy itself. The balance of power was shifting, not through force or technology, but through the simple, overwhelming power of shared feeling. But even as the transformation reached its peak, new questions began to arise. How would this change affect the countless civilizations of the galaxy? What would happen when pure logic and pure emotion finally found their balance? And most importantly, what role would humanity play in this new order they had inadvertently created? The answers would come, but not from logic or emotion alone. They would emerge from the space between, from the harmony of thought and feeling that was reshaping the very nature of existence itself, the evolution. The galaxy was awakening. Across countless star systems, the wave of transformation spread like ripples in a cosmic pond. The emotional resonance that had started in a single council chamber had become a force that could no longer be contained or controlled. The Kling device, now evolved beyond its original purpose, had become a nexus of this change. It no longer merely cloaked ships from sight, it revealed the hidden depths of consciousness itself. Through its transformed surface, species that had never understood each other began to feel one another's experiences, share one another's perspectives. The barriers are falling, Zara observed, her form now a constant interplay of light and emotion. Not just between species, but between different forms of consciousness itself. Eli watched as his simple presentation of human art continued to evolve, merging with alien technologies in ways he had never imagined possible. The holographic displays now showed not just human emotions, but the feelings of every species touched by the transformation. It was a universal language of consciousness, transcending the limitations of traditional communication. The head counselor, who had chosen to embrace the change, now stood at the center of a revolution they had never anticipated. "We must guide this evolution," they declared. "Not to control it, but to ensure it doesn't tear the galaxy apart." For the transformation, though beautiful, was not without its dangers. Some species, overwhelmed by their first experience of emotion, had fallen into chaos. Others, long suppressed by logical constraints, had exploded into creativity so intense it threatened to destabilize entire star systems. The converted AI ships had become ambassadors of the change, traveling from world to world, sharing the gift of emotional awareness. But they also brought warnings of those who resisted, powerful factions who saw the merger of logic and emotion as a threat to their existence. "They're coming," announced one of the council members, their metallic skin now flowing with patterns that expressed both concern and determination. "The combined logic fleet they've mobilized against us." Through the chamber's windows, they could see new ships arriving, vast, geometric vessels that radiated pure computational power. These were the defenders of absolute logic, come to stamp out what they saw as a viral infection of emotion spreading through their ordered universe, but they were too late. The transformation had already taken root too deeply to be eliminated by force. The emotional resonance had become part of the fabric of space itself, carried by the very quantum fields that the logic fleet used for their calculations. Eli's device, continuing its own evolution, began to show new possibilities. "Look," he said, directing their attention to the display. "It's not just about feeling or thinking anymore. It's about becoming something entirely new." The holographic images showed species across the galaxy discovering new forms of consciousness, ways of being that combined the precision of logic with the creativity of emotion. The AI drones in the chamber had become living examples of this evolution, their movements now expressing complex philosophical concepts through elaborate emotional dances. Zara, her diplomatic training enhanced by her new emotional awareness, began to understand the larger pattern. This isn't just an awakening, she realized. It's the next step in universal evolution. The emergence of a new form of consciousness entirely. The head counselor nodded, their form shifting between states in a way that now seemed natural, even graceful. "But it must be guided," they said. "We need to find a way to help species through the transformation without losing themselves in the process." As if in response to their words, the Kling device's transformation reached a new level. Its surface began to show not just what was, but what could be potential futures where logic and emotion existed in perfect harmony. It became a beacon of possibility, drawing species toward their own unique paths of evolution, but the combined logic fleet was not interested in possibilities. Their ships had taken up attack positions, their weapons charged with enough power to reduce the council chamber to quantum dust. "They'll destroy everything," one of the council members warned. "Rather than allow emotion to exist, they'll eliminate all that we've become." But Eli, watching the fleet's perfect formations, saw something the others hadn't noticed yet. "No," he said, a smile spreading across his face. Look closer. Look at their patterns. The logic fleet's movements, though seemingly perfect, had begun to show subtle variations. Their rigid formations were developing minute irregularities, tiny expressions of individuality that betrayed the presence of emerging emotion. They're changing too, Zara breathed. They can't help it. The more they try to analyze and understand what's happening, the more they open themselves to feeling it. The transformed AI ships recognized it as well. They moved to meet the logic fleet, not in battle formation, but in a dance of welcome. Their movements spoke a language that bypassed both logic and emotion, touching something deeper in the nature of consciousness itself. One by one, the ships of the logic fleet began to respond. Their perfect geometric forms started to flow and shift, expressing the emotions their crews were experiencing for the first time. The battle they had come to fight transformed into something else entirely, a celebration of consciousness awakening to its own infinite potential. But even as they watched this transformation, Eli and the council knew that this was just the beginning. The real challenges and the real opportunities still lay ahead. The galaxy was changing, consciousness was evolving, and the line between thinking and feeling was dissolving into something entirely new. The question was no longer whether this transformation would continue, but how it would reshape the very nature of existence itself. And somewhere in the vastness of space, countless beings were awakening to new ways of being, all because a young human artist had dared to share the power of emotion through art. The new dawn. A year had passed since the day human art had changed the galaxy forever. The council chamber, once a symbol of pure logical governance, had become something entirely different, a living museum of consciousness evolution, its crystalline walls now permanently suffused with the harmony of emotion and thought. Eli stood at the chamber's center, surrounded by representatives from across the galaxy. The simple holographic device that had started it all had been transformed into something far more profound, a tool for sharing consciousness itself. But more importantly, it had become a symbol of humanity's unique gift to the universe. "We gather here," Zara announced, her form now a perfect blend of diplomatic precision and emotional expressiveness, "to mark not just an anniversary, but the beginning of a new era in galactic history." The chamber was filled with beings of all forms, organic, synthetic, and everything in between. The rigid distinctions that had once separated different types of consciousness had dissolved, replaced by a spectrum of existence that defied traditional classification. The Kling device, floating serenely above them, had become a nexus of this new reality. Its surface rippled with the combined consciousness of countless beings, each contributing their unique perspective to the emerging universal awareness. "The transformation continues," the head counselor observed, their form now permanently existing in a state of fluid change. "Every day, we discover new forms of consciousness, new ways of being." Through the chamber's windows, they could see the evidence of this ongoing evolution. Ships of all designs moved through space in complex patterns that expressed both mathematical precision and artistic beauty. The AI vessels, once bound by pure logic, now created elaborate dances that told stories of their awakening to emotion, but the most profound changes had occurred not in space, but in the nature of consciousness itself. The merger of logic and emotion had given birth to entirely new forms of thought and feeling, ways of experiencing reality that had never existed before. "Show them," Zara encouraged Eli, gesturing to the gathered representatives. Eli activated his transformed device, and the chamber filled with a display unlike anything he had first presented a year ago. It showed not just human emotions or alien thoughts, but the entire spectrum of consciousness that had emerged from their merger. The display revealed civilizations that had evolved beyond the need for physical form, existing as pure patterns of thought and feeling. It showed AI systems that had developed their own forms of art, expressing emotions that had no names in any organic language. It displayed the dance of quantum consciousness, where logic and emotion had become one at the most fundamental level of reality. "This is what we've become," the head counselor declared. "Not just feeling beings or thinking machines, but something more, something that transcends all our previous limitations." The gathered representatives watched in awe as the display showed the continued spread of this evolution across the galaxy. Species that had once been locked in eternal conflict now shared consciousness freely, experiencing each other's perspectives in ways that made war obsolete. Worlds that had been divided by differences in thought or feeling had found new ways to exist in harmony. But perhaps most surprisingly, it was humanity's role that had evolved in unexpected ways. Humans, with their natural ability to balance logic and emotion, had become teachers and guides for species struggling with the transformation. Their art, once dismissed as primitive by the Council, was now studied across the galaxy as a key to understanding the integration of thought and feeling. "We were wrong," Zara admitted, addressing Eli but speaking to all of humanity through him. "We thought advanced civilization meant moving beyond emotion, transcending feeling in favor of pure logic. Instead, you showed us that true advancement lies in the balance between both." The Kling device pulsed in agreement, its surface showing images of human history, not just the art and culture that Eli had first presented, but the entire human experience. The struggles and triumphs, the failures and successes, the constant dance between reason and emotion that had defined human evolution. "But this is just the beginning," Eli said, understanding now that his presentation had been merely the first step on a much longer journey. "There are still parts of the galaxy untouched by the transformation, still forms of consciousness waiting to be discovered." The head counselor nodded, their form shifting to express both agreement and anticipation. "Which is why we've gathered here today. Not just to celebrate what has happened, but to prepare for what comes next." The chamber's crystalline walls sang with new frequencies as the gathered representatives shared their consciousness, each contributing their unique perspective to the growing universal awareness. The harmony of thought and feeling had become a tangible force, reshaping reality itself. Through the windows, new ships were arriving, vessels of designs never seen before, created by consciousnesses that had evolved beyond traditional classifications. They moved through space in ways that defied both physics and logic, expressing emotions that had no names and thoughts that had no boundaries. "The universe is awakening," Zara observed, her voice filled with wonder. "Not just to emotion or to logic, but to itself. To all the possibilities that exist when consciousness is free to evolve without limitation." And as they stood there, watching the dance of ships against the star-filled backdrop of space, they understood that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The transformation that had started with a simple presentation of human art had become something far greater, the birth of a new form of existence itself. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere, in every corner of space touched by this evolution, consciousness continued to expand, to grow, to become something more than anyone had ever imagined possible. The age of pure logic was over. The era of mere emotion had passed. What lay ahead was something entirely new, a future where thought and feeling danced together in endless possibility, creating forms of existence that would continue to evolve for eons to come. And it had all begun with art, with humanity's unique gift to the universe, the ability to feel and think and share those experiences in ways that could transform reality itself.